Welcome to the Data Ops product overview of DataKitchen's software platform. My name is Gil Ben-Ghiat. I'm one of the founders. We're going to cover part 2. I don't want to break production when I deploy my changes. We're going to cover sandbox creation, automatic deployment, and we're going to be looking at a cloud environment. First, a few more slides on the background of what we're going to see. So we're going to start with a situation where there's a data engineer and a data analyst who produced a Tableau report for a VP of marketing. In there, the data engineer used their favorite tool. It's actually going to be Pentaho. It could be Informatica Talent or just plain old SQL, whatever that person prefers. And the data analyst used Tableau. And again, that could be any BI tool, ClickView, Power BI, Looker, and so forth. And there's a simple 5-step recipe that goes from Redshift, does some transformations with Pentaho, visualizes Tableau, and uses Tableau Online to show that to the VP of marketing. And in the story, the VP of marketing says, I want a new customer segmentation tomorrow. So how can this team develop and deploy something rapidly and without breaking things? So there's a few needs. There's going to be a new person to do that segmentation, and that new person is going to be a data scientist. They're going to use a new tool. In this case, it's a Jupyter Notebook. Again, we're not precious which tool they use. It could be R, it could be SAS, it could be Python. It's going to require a change to a database, a new visualization in Tableau, some changes over here, and the team needs a place to do its work safely. So we're going to create a brand new kitchen called DevSprint, where we could take this 5-step recipe and add 2 more steps and make some other modifications, test it, and then deploy into production. And once it's in production, the idea is, like I said, run all the tests here. Once all the tests pass, deploy, and then what was in the DevSprint becomes the production recipe. All right, let's take a look at that in the product. So here we are in the production kitchen, and there's this recipe called Agile Analytic Ops. And let's take a look at that production recipe. Here it is, 5 steps, and we're going to need to make some modifications to it, add 2 more steps, test it, and then deploy to production. So the first thing we're going to do is sandbox creation. And there's a wizard for that. And I could create a new kitchen by creating this plus sign. And remember, a kitchen is a new branch of software plus an environment and data to work on. So to create the kitchen, there is a wizard, and the wizard gives a little illustration. What is a kitchen? As I mentioned, it's an environment, hardware, software, and actually data. There's a way to limit the people and have some controls on who has access to that kitchen. In the kitchen are recipes and run recipes, which are orders. You can set up variables and have different levels of overrides. There are regular variables. There are overrides at the recipe level. Those are called variations. And then there's kitchen level overrides. And those are useful to focusing on where the data comes from and where the data goes in a kitchen. Of course, a kitchen has its own branch, and there's ways to link to Agile tools as well. So we're going to call this new kitchen DevSprint. And in the interest of time, we'll call everything in this wizard DevSprint to save a little bit of typing. This step says, what recipes do you want to run as we create the kitchen and in order to create the kitchen? And here we have a variety of choices. So since this is in the cloud, we can set up new clusters. We have the choice of spinning up a new Redshift cluster or just simply creating the schema, and we'll do that. because it's faster. But remember, this could be any recipe, and it's a way to abstract out from the person, such as the data scientist or data engineer doing the work, from knowing what needs to be done. They just run this wizard. And we're also able to limit the scope of the recipes that are in play. Here we're only interested in the Agile Analytic Ops recipe, so we'll select that. We can set up, we have the option to set up another vault for secrets management, but right now we'll use the DataKitchen default. And since we said we wanted a new place to work and a new schema, we need to name it. So we're going to call it we're going to make a DevSprint schema in Redshift, and we're going to make a DevSprint project in Tableau where the team could work without impacting production. So we see that the wizard has started, the recipe has run, and if we go to the kitchen list, we have this new kitchen called DevSprint. If we look at it and see if anything's run yet, yes, there's one active order, and that's the one, it's done now, that creates the schema. Okay, so let's take a look at the recipes. If you remember, there was a 5-step recipe that we want to have as a 7-step recipe. Well, actually, we've done some of that work already. It's right here. We could see that there's a couple more steps in there. And let's just take a look at one of the new steps in the recipe. So let's look at this Python Anaconda segment. And how is this configured? Well, there's an IPython notebook, which is in source control, that's run each time this recipe executes. And let's see how it's configured. And we'll just go to the source view for it. And we can see it's a pretty simple configuration where we specify what the name of the notebook is. And then we have different parameters that the notebook uses to run either in production or in development. And we can even take another peek and say, well, let's do that parameter substitution and see what we have. Well, we see that some things are actually stored in the vault, which is how we manage our secrets and credentials. And here we see the DevSprint as the name of the schema, which is what we specified earlier. All right, so as an example of making changes, let's add a description to this node. Uses Python to make a segment. Since I'm using source control, I could put a comment in here. This represents the addition of 2 steps, and I'm going to save that into my source control. And if I want to take a peek at the history, look, here it is. Here it is right there. All right, so what we would do is next is we would run the recipe, and then we would make sure that all of the tests pass. And if all the tests pass, we then deploy to production. And let's take a look at how that looks. So for the deploy to production, I click this, merge the DevSprint up to production, and I get another wizard. It shows me a list of all the files that I changed, and in this case, it was just actually the one. We could look at the difference in the source code, and we can see that here is the comment that I've added. I go to the next step. It says, are there any merge conflicts? There are none. I have the option to save all the recipe runs up into the master file. At this point, I do not. And I will complete the wizard, which does the merge. Now, if I go to my kitchen list and look at production, and I check my history, I can see here, here's the change I made, and here's the merge up into production. Now, the next time the recipe runs, I've actually deployed that, and I'm good to go.